Well, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. My name is David Shirk. I'm the director of the Transborder Institute, and it's my great pleasure, excuse me, to welcome you here to the University of San Diego's Joan B. Kroc School of Peace Studies for a conversation with Governor Ernesto Ruffo Appel. For the past 16 years, the Transborder Institute has worked to promote understanding, dialogue, and cooperation between the United States and Mexico, to address challenges and opportunities that stem from the binational relationship, and to advance the common interests of our two nations. In addition to bringing to campus nationally and internationally recognized speakers and conference participants, the Institute works directly with governmental, private sector, non-governmental organizations in order to advance this mission. We've been very pleased over the last year to feature programs with former President Vicente Fox, U.S. Ambassador Tony Wayne, Mexican human rights activist Miguel Sarre, and current Secretary of Foreign Affairs Patricia Espinosa. As Mexico's 2012 presidential elections approach, it's our pleasure to host a series of conversations with some of the protagonists of the upcoming contest to determine Mexico's political future, including our upcoming Sister Sally Fury speaker, Denise Dresser, a political commentator who will be with us later in May, but especially tonight's speaker, Ernesto Ruffo Appel. Easily one of the most significant figures in Mexico's process of democratization and political change over the last 25 years. As is well known on both sides of the border, Mr. Ruffo became governor of Baja California in 1989. He became the first opposition party member to become governor in Mexico since the founding of its long-ruling party in 1929. Prior to that, Mr. Ruffo had been a businessman, a manager at a local cannery in the fishing industry of Ensenada, the Zapata cannery, and he joined the National Action Party in 1982 and was elected mayor of his home city, Ensenada, in 1986. Winning the first recognized victory for the National Action Party in the state of Baja California. His gubernatorial campaign 3 years later paved the way for other National Action Party gains in Baja California and other states during the 1990s, and eventually helped set the stage for the PAN's first presidential electoral victory in the year 2000. As governor of Baja California, Mr. Ruffo introduced the country's first tamper-proof voter identification cards and a statewide system for electoral oversight that became the model for Mexico's national Federal Electoral Institute, which has become in turn a model for democratizing countries around the world. After his governorship, Mr. Ruffo served as commissioner for Northern Border Affairs from 2001 to 2004 under President Vicente Fox Quesada. He was known at that time as Mexico's border czar and supervised a staff of 50 people with office locations in Tijuana, Ciudad Juarez, and Monterrey, and was charged with helping to tackle some of the most persistent and vexing challenges that face us here in the border region: managing cross-border migration, promoting sustainable, equitable economic development, protecting natural resources, developing effective cross-border management of infrastructure, and controlling intractable problems such as narco-related corruption and violence. Having taken some time away from the political limelight, Governor Ruffo surprised many observers in 2011 by announcing his interest in running for elected office only for the third time in his life, this time as a candidate for the Mexican Senate. Part of what motivated this decision, as he said recently to us, was his strong support for his party's first female presidential candidate, Josefina Vasquez Mota, and Mr. Ruffo is currently a member of Ms. Vasquez Mota's presidential campaign team. This afternoon, we hope to learn more about Mr. Ruffo's own interpretation of his experiences in politics and government in Mexico, his ambitions as a senator for the state of Baja California, and his hopes for Mexico. So with no further delay, I hope you will all join me in providing a warm welcome to, on behalf of the Transborder Institute and our campus, to a major figure in Baja California and in Mexican politics more generally, former governor and current Senate candidate Ernesto Ruffo Appel.
Hi, David.
Hi, thanks for being here, Governor.
Feel like the star here. Once you said all of those things about me, I'm very interested in trying to, well, develop a description on Mexican politics for this year. I guess you named the discussion to be a conversation with ex-governor, I guess appealing to my former experience on the public issues, on the Mexican politics, and the border. So in that regard, might not be a long exposure. I'm very interested in your questions. But it's about what I believe has been the core of the Mexican political evolution. And this has to do very much with the lack of opportunity for people. When you find yourself in a place with not many options, then you become kind of feudal, meaning you don't ask, you take. And Mexico, well, and all of its history has been a country with increasing opportunity, but not as the many numbers of Mexicans. We're better today, but it was not so 50 years or 100 years ago. And that explains an authoritarian system. We had a lot of internal discussions once we got independent from Spain, but not really integrated as a country because of the many regions, the many origins. You know, before the Spaniards came to Mexico, Spanish was not spoken. And this was the year of 1500, and well, I guess probably 80, 100 tribes or nations, like the Aztecs. But they would not understand each other. It was many countries in a territory. The Spaniards made it to be one language, one religion. But under a king, under the church, you know, people that would not speak Spanish were given to the priests in the encomienda system. I don't know how you translate that, David. Encomienda.
There's no translation.
Okay. You were given to a priest, and he would take care of you. And your family. And so the influence of the church up to the 1800s was very important. Actually, Napoleon took Spain in 1807, and so the Spaniard king got well, he was not anymore a king, Ferdinand. And so a priest began the independence war in Mexico in 1810. And people would follow a priest under the banner of Virgen de Guadalupe, Virgin Mary. But I'm trying to describe the state of mind and the state of education. I guess we were not really ready for independence, but Napoleon took the king and got the Spaniards so weak that the abandoned Spanish armies in Mexico, plus the Mexican people, made independence. But since then, we have had a lot of dictators and also presidents, coups, how do you say that, coup?
Caudillos or coups?
Coup
Coup d'etat.
Yeah, right. So it was kind of a turmoil for the very first 100 years. But the common standard there was absolute power. The one standing in front of government had to be absolute. Everything under control by one and the guns. Of course, ideas, how to incorporate a government, a central government, a federal government, to bring in another king. We tried everything. The French came with Maximilian. For 3 years, he was the emperor. While there was a Mexican president running all over in a horse wagon, sometimes in El Paso, Texas, he had to flee away. But he recovered the country, Mr. Juarez, a great Mexican president. So all of that then came to a sudden peace by a very strong dictator, Mr. Diaz, from 1884 until 1910. People from the north of Mexico began talking about elections, democracy. And that made a revolution. And that revolution, which was successful, General Diaz went out to France, I believe, he's buried there, made a collective authoritarian government. We had dictators. That's one person. The revolution made a political organization to be absolute. Like the Communist Party in Russia, maybe. And it was born in times of the socialistic ideas in the world at that time. And it made a new Mexican constitution in 1917. And so from there, we had all this political construction under a single powerful group. It began with the generals from the revolution, but they began killing each other. Do you remember Pancho Villa? He was one of them. Zapata. He was another one from central Mexico. But what I'm trying to describe here is how an absolute authoritarian reality has been kind of toying away. I mean, having its power being decreased slowly, and it's been because also slowly a little bit more of education, a little bit more of opportunity, people being independent, being able to develop their own future. And so that process, I guess, got onto me. David was telling about me being the first mayor and governor by election and making the first Mexican governments in opposition to the PRI governments that were constructed by the revolution. I'm not too smart. It happened. And I guess it's the evolution, the political evolution of nations. I guess it happens to everybody in every part of the world. So here we are in 2012. Now we had two PAN from my party, Mexican presidents, but not able to really discuss things in an open, constructive way, because all we did is to have a new president from a different party, but the Congress has not made, let's say, a route for Mexico. They are debating partisan politics, but not the Mexican general interest. And it happened that by this evolution, the PRI, the party of the revolution, in this lack of sufficient budget from government, the power of government was held on account of the budget, meaning the revolution money, which much came from Mexico nationalizing oil in 1938. The Mexican budget has been mostly dependent on oil. Or in other words, as Mexicans don't pay enough taxes to sustain our government. So, not having enough in order to hold together a political party that was sustaining itself on political power began weakening. I guess that's what explains why I made governorship. But also because the PRI divided itself, because they were not sustaining their own numbers of people within the PRI, and it became the PRD, the separated party. So now in the Congress of the Union, we have three parties: the PRI, the PRD, which is a division of the PRI, sort of say. If the PRD guys will be listening to me, they'll be throwing things to me right now. But that's the way I understand it. And the PAN, which is my party, which is its essence is that about building citizenship, trusting the human person. It's about self-sustainability by your own effort. So it's, I would say, a party station onto the modern Western way of thinking, sustained from the person which we accept to be transcendent with its own dignity. So I got into, myself is from business. You were telling about my ability of canning fish. And I did all of this on government from my responsibility as a citizen. So I don't regard myself as a professional politician. I don't live from politics. I just would like to see politics do a better environment around me and my family to have more opportunity. But I find myself into a reality that doesn't provide much opportunity if you don't fight for it. And so I guess that's why I got into the PAN. And, well, I left government in 2004 and said, okay, back to business. But now 2012, and it seems the PRI can win again. And I said, no way, Jose. I gotta do something. And so that's why about this Senate thing. But this 2012 is also surrounded by other pressures or forces. One of them which also affects you, well, both of them. The economy. This is a year with the reality of a scarcity of opportunity, a lot of unemployment. So governments in economics are doing bad. And that's bad for politics, at least for the one in government. So the Mexican president is from my party today, Mr. Felipe Calderón, and he is weathering a bad economy. Mexico is not doing too bad in economics. Actually, our numbers are very stable. But our income, it's about $6,500. Yours is, I don't know, 37,000. So there is a big difference in reality. But we've been improving in our income. 10 years ago, we were 4,500. So even though doing these positive steps, but the environment today is very difficult for any government, incoming government, or incumbent government. And the other one is drugs. The cartels have too much money. I believe that the value of the trade, the drug trade in Mexico, is about 10% of gross national product. Wow. That's why they can buy whatever. And that's one of the most important things we're fighting. President Calderón, as you know, has a war against drugs. And many say, why is he doing it like a war? Well, because he had no option. The presidential office was nearly taken by the bad guys. But this new period of governance, 2012 to 2018, could make a new paradigm on how to fight that. And so that's why I began supporting Mrs. Vasquez Mota. I believe that what can change this very difficult reality is supporting the family. Our national anthem says that there is a soldier in every son of the homeland, and which is not true. There is not one soldier per every Mexican, but there are parents for every family. So when I see a woman like Mrs. Mota, Vasquez, Mota in Mexico means marijuana. then I see that this family paradigm can sustain parents supported by governmental programs in order to prevent the youth from falling onto the problems of drugs, but also then recuperating security, because for the first time then we probably be on the offensive. Today, it seems we're on the offensive, but no, we're just trying to save the public places. So that's, in general, what I would say. Maybe I should add maybe the description of the PRI as a non-democratic political elite which seeks control of power. And PAN, my party, a democratic build-up by a growing middle class. Middle class is so important for citizens. The middle class makes citizens. And the PRD, a popular integration of groups under several social reform leaders. Those are the three forces in Mexico today. 2012, I would say, well, March of 2012, meaning today, the PRI is 40% in the polls, the PAN is 30%, and the PRD is 20%. The election is on July 1st, so I need to work a lot. Well, then that's why my reason for the Senate, and also seeking to organize many activities on the Mexican border, because there is an opportunity, always a growing opportunity on the US-Mexico border. About 200,000 or 200 billion, just the way you say, is the trade worth between Mexico and the US, maybe a little bit more. And this is all about the border. So I think that I can make a team with other senators from the border and also US senators and work for this region, which I call Mexica. I think it can work. Well, now I'm ready for questions. Thank you.
Great. Have a seat. We'll have a conversation. I will take the opportunity to ask a few questions as we get organized here in the theater to receive questions from the audience. Thank you for your very effective and succinct summary of 300 years of Mexican history. My students would probably like me to be that brief in covering such a long time period, but I think you did an excellent job of laying out some of the key historical moments. Looking to the upcoming campaign, as you pointed out, there's a sort of 10, maybe 15-point spread between the two major parties. It is expected that as the election date on, it's July 1st, correct? Sunday, July 1st of 2012. As we approach that date, the difference between the National Action Party candidate, who has about 30%, as you said, and the current leading frontrunner from the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or the PRI, as you've called it, the difference is likely to narrow significantly, and we expect to see a much more competitive race. At the same time, you are virtually certain to be Mexico's, one of Baja California's next senators, partly because of the formulas that are used to determine the three senators who will come from this election. So you're almost certain to be not Governor Ruffo when I next see you, but Senator Ruffo. What are your top priorities once you're in the Senate? And I say this especially because you will represent not only Baja California, but as you say, Mexico, and those of us here in San Diego who are part of that binational border region. What will you be doing in Mexico City to represent us in the Mexican Senate, and of course, Baja California?
Well, I also did function between 2000 and 2003 as the presidential commissioner for the border for President Fox. And what I learned there is that we have a big opportunity, but we have no political focus as a region. Direction is in Mexico City or at Washington, D.C. Also, by being a governor, I remember the Border Governors Conference, 6 Mexican governors, 4 American governors. We always were talking about the border of Mexico and the opportunity. But all of those wishes would crash in Washington or Mexico City not because they don't like us, but because of the national vision of each country. It's naturally centralized in the capital cities. And this region is a different region. It's not fully, in economical terms, an American border, nor a Mexican border. That's why I call it a Mexico. And then what would be my priorities? I need to integrate a Senate commission with the 3 senators of each of the 6 Mexican states, so there'll be 18 senators out of 128 in the whole of Mexico. And I think that if we join vision with the border governors, we'll be having political power, and we be having opportunity through strategic planning. And that, at the moment when you discuss the national budget, then we have our conditions to central Mexico. Maybe the border U.S. governors can do the same to Washington. So that be my priority. There is one big problem in the border, which is water. We need to solve that problem together. The Colorado River and Rio Bravo, or Grande, how you call it from the U.S., must be well managed, and also find the ways on how to use water in a more efficient way, or reuse water. So those things. And then there are opportunities like, well, by being myself in Baja, I started promoting the idea of this equivalent port to LA and Long Beach, south of Ensenada. The place is called Colonet, and it could be as big as LA and Long Beach if the economy recovers. I remember talking to your ex-California governors about doing that. And I thought the longshoremen would sacrifice me at that meeting. But no, because LA is at siege by cargo. The infrastructure is not sufficient. The long lines while you're driving in the highway. So infrastructure relief can be a complement to Mexico. Of course, today the economy is so bad that LA could do 15 million containers, but today it's only doing 12. There is room enough, so they don't want Colonet to happen really today. But it's in the scope of vision. So things like that, building railways then, roads, border crossings to be more efficient, security systems in order to prevent trafficking. drugs or guns, as it was happening. All of those many things. I'll be very busy, but looking forward on meeting those challenges. I'm eager to be there.
Well, thinking a little bit about the campaign, you've characterized the PRD, the Revolutionary Democratic Party, as a leftist socialist party, almost I'll use the word basurera del PRI, or sort of an offshoot of the PRI. You've described the PAN as a democratic, middle-class party, currently polling around 30%, and the PRI, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, is a non-democratic elite that mainly is in search of power. And yet, the current PRI candidate who leads in the polls, Enrique Peña Nieto, has about 40% of the vote. This is the party that ruled Mexico for over 70 years and still governs two-thirds of all states and municipalities in Mexico. Still very, very strong party. But it's a party that under Peña Nieto's leadership has tried to portray itself as a new PRI, a new party. And you alluded in your remarks to the idea that it was the possibility of the return of the PRI that galvanized you and encouraged you to go back into politics. What is it that you're concerned about? What are your fears? Are we not talking about a new and different PRI, or do you think that this is potentially a return of some of the old practices in Mexico that go back to the kind of authoritarianism and absolute power mentality that you described earlier?
Well, I began getting alarmed when I began looking at the newspapers and looking the same old faces. Dinosaurs are old.
Dinosaurs?
Yes. And I began looking at all these old dinosaur faces. I thought, oh my God. And then a baby saw.
Baby saw.
Which is the one living today. But he moves like a dinosaur. It's the same thing. So, no, there is no change in essence. They are not democratic. They don't have internal elections for their candidates. They designate them. They have big trouble on doing that because they have revolts and things like that, but it makes it look like the Bolshevik and the Menshevik, and it's simply the old story with a baby face dinosaur.
And I think if we do have questions, please go to the microphone and I'll take them in turn, but I'll keep asking questions until we're done. But if you have questions, please come up to the mic. My other question, I guess, is you brought up the very difficult challenge and threat of drug trafficking and drug corruption and the efforts of the Calderón administration to take on drug trafficking organizations. And recently, in the last month or so, we've seen allegations in the Baja California press trying to link your administration, when you were governor, to drug corruption. First of all, more generally speaking, what can Mexico do in the face of this very severe problem and the very strong power of drug trafficking organizations that you alluded to? And what do you have to say specifically with regard to allegations that there was corruption, drug-related corruption in your administration?
Well, the drug thing is so difficult because their money can buy anybody. It not only buys people from the PRI. It buys people from the PAN. It's money. And it also has bought a lot of policemen, police chiefs. And it can be in your government. But those people we're not proposed by you into the organization of government. They were already there. So you find yourself in a very difficult, non-transparent environment because people look like people. I mean, you can look at everybody and everybody is as honest as I can believe, or dishonest, I don't know. So they just are there and they then make stories or carry stories with them. So there are allegations. But myself, my attitude has been to be open, transparent, and respond to any question, demonstrate my assets, my income. And I ask the same to be done by the other guys. But the other guys feel offended when I tell them, why don't you declare your wealth in public? So they begin saying stories about me. And that's kind of a very difficult environment. And like 3 months ago, your DEA made some allegations around ex-Mexican governors from the state of Tamaulipas. So investigations are on, as I believe, as I've been told. But you know, the bad press on them doesn't look good. So they began researching about Ruffo when he was the governor, ended my government in 1995, but they're bringing in the old cookies from an old oven, all burnt out, and the stories to me. But it's politics. But myself to confront that is being open.
Great. I think we have a couple of questions coming up, so I'll ask the members of the audience to identify themselves and state their question.
My name is Peter. Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Peter Flournoy, and I look at the drug war that's been going on in Mexico and the horrendous cost in both material and people. 50,000 was the last figure I heard. Do you have a suggestion for a better way of approaching that problem?
Yes, Peter. I think we need to revise the paradigm about how the reality of drugs is. Some days ago, when I began realizing I'm going to be a senator, I woke up and I said, oh, now I know. I'm going to make a law prohibiting suicide. And my wife began laughing at me. The one that wants to suicide is going to do it regardless of the law.
Oh, you were going to make a law that would prohibit suicide?
Yes. And I told her, then you see that if people want to go into drugs, you cannot prevent it. They'll do it. So this paradigm is about the family. To tell our young about how to learn and know and prevent. Our national anthem says that we have a soldier on every son of God, but there are not enough soldiers. But there are enough parents. So we need to support them, government, public office, through the several programs. So we prevent our young, and then we can cut off the growth. And then probably by that we be in the offensive. Otherwise, 10% of national product worth of value from drugs into the Mexican economy is going to be making a toll every year for whatever number of years. So we need to change the strategy. Right now, I think we got them away from Los Pinos, meaning the presidential house has been cleared out of the bad guys. but we are not exempt. So we need something new. So Peter, it's about building this new paradigm. And I think America has to do also very much about that.
So on the one hand, achieving a new paradigm, on the other hand, reducing the national security threat that drug trafficking organizations represented to Los Pinos, the Mexican White House. But just to push you a little bit on Peter's question, a few months ago we had one of your co-partisans, President Fox here, speaking out very vocally on the issue of legalization of drugs. We here in California voted on the issue of legalization of marijuana last electoral cycle. We may vote again in the next electoral cycle. And the state of Colorado will definitely be voting on the issue of marijuana legalization. After losing 50,000 lives in the last 5 years, how do you, as a Mexican, view the question of legalization? I think many people who ask about drug policy and possible alternatives want to understand what politicians especially think about that question.
Well, I would elaborate around the word legalization, because when you say that, I remember the last time I said openly, oh boy, the newspapers were burning me in green bushes. And what it takes is to have an approach like the new paradigm, and then you begin recognizing that if there is going to be somebody that says, hey, I want to use drugs, so what? Then you got to do something for him. And that's within the new paradigm. But it's not just openly saying drugs are open like liquor is today, but in a controlled manner.
So focusing on regulating and especially preventing and treating people who use drugs, is that, just so I can be clear, that's more what you're talking about?
Yes, or if they want to say themselves, I'm an addict and I want to be that way, okay, then you be getting your prescription.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry. Please, Enrique.
Señor Gobernador, gusto de verlo. Enrique Morones with Border Angels. My question is in reference to the fact that we know there's tremendous corruption and a horrible drug situation here in the United States. However, we seem to only hear about what's happening in Mexico. That's the way the media presents it. What can we do, we that are very proud, as all Mexicans are being Mexicans, be sure that we have a stronger voice south of the border to say, hey, that's enough. These attacks on our community and blaming us for all of these ills is not fair. Of course, both countries need to do something, but that drug situation, it's the U.S. demand that's the main culprit, and that corruption that we have in Mexico affects Mexicans, while the corruption here affects the whole world. So what can we do to have a stronger voice in that? And secondly, what can we do as Mexicans that live in the exterior to be able to vote in larger numbers in Mexican elections? Because, as you know, we were able to vote for president 6 years ago, very small turnout. Again, it's going to be a fairly small turnout. And we need to be able to go to the consulate or the embassy to vote, especially those of us that do not have documents. Because that's the loudest, that's the most important voice. And those people are not going to go back to Mexico to vote. They're undocumented here. And there's got to be a way. So what can we do to have a stronger voice against this image that's being portrayed of Mexico in a negative light? And what can we do to have more equitable voting power here in the United States? Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias, Enrique. Well, undoubtedly, to make something happen is because you begin discussing about it and talking, to reason. And both nations need to acknowledge that there is a big problem with drugs and begin talking a lot of it. Let's say we arrive to a new paradigm in Mexico, but if the U.S. does not, then the need for trafficking is going to remain as strong. So we need to do it together. So there is a chance that the drug thing is going to normalize. I don't think it's going to disappear. I think it's going to be there. Like alcohol, I mean, you try to forbid it in your constitution and then you have to make it back because it was impossible. So I think we need to talk about a lot of common sense on the situation. Otherwise, there is going to be a possible coup d'etat to the Mexican government all the time. And then some politicians get corrupted at important levels. And our government is at peril of being narcotized. So we badly need a common policy. So it's about talking and about Mexicans voting for Mexico in the U.S., around the Mexican embassies and consulates. Well, there must be a bigger effort, and also the associations, the NGOs of Mexican regionalism in the U.S., well, use that to talk more about that. I found that there is a lot more activity or worries about Mexico when you're away Mexico. You grow passionate and interested. You have more opportunities, of course, in this country. You begin learning and being more educated. And I think Mexicans have been here in the U.S. for 20, 30 years, go down there, and they make a difference because they go back trained and with savings. So yeah, let's keep making that be bigger.
Let's take some more questions, and I'll just remind the question askers to please let us know who they are and what their affiliation is.
Okay. Hi, my name is Diana Rodriguez, and I am a senior here at the University of San Diego. My question is a little bit off topic from the drug situation, but I just have a question for you personally. Like, how likely do you think it is that Josefina Vasquez Mota will win the following elections? And also, I've heard a lot of talks about a bot election, like that the PRI has paid in order to get a lot of votes. So what do you think about that? Have you heard the same thing, or, yeah, what are your thoughts about it?
Well, there is one thing about polls today. If the election was today, I think the PRI would win because it's 40%, as I mentioned a moment ago. Mrs. Vasquez has 30%, but the poll is from the last 6 months, has depicted a growth slope on Mrs. Vasquez and a decline slope on Mr. Peña. So it seems that she could win if she's fast enough. But the time is not in our favor because the election process begins this March 30th and ends in June 27th to have an election on July 1st. So we have like 95 days. So I need to work a lot. Meaning other candidates from the PEN and herself and push. But it's about trust from the Mexican middle class. If the Mexican middle class gets to trust really on Josefina, I think she's going to be able to win.
Great. Next question, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
There was 2
follow-up.
questions.
Yeah, the other one about the bot elections.
What do you think are the prospects of fraud, including the buying of votes by the PRI in this upcoming election?
We have spent a lot of money from the national public monies to prevent that. Now I can do my commercial. Baja did organize the polling system where you can really control. And it was given to a citizens institution, which is called the IFE. They can try, yes, but it's got to be very complex to go about fraud. What it happens today more likely is using your needs. If you're a poor person and you get a promise or you get given something on exchange of your vote, that can happen. That's the type of fraud that you will encounter in Mexico today. Using money, that's why the bad guys, the drug guys, can influence an election by giving money or goods to people in order that they go vote for somebody. It has happened within my party. We are a Democratic Party, but sometimes you see people that is coming in to vote, and you say, what is this guy coming from? And he's being sponsored by somebody. That type of fraud is coming from poverty, from basic needs, and people with a lot of money to control political power.
Great. Next
Mitch
question,
Beauchamp.
please.
Presente. Mitchell Beecham, City Treasurer, National City. The concept of maquiladoras was Don Enrique Peña Nieto, and it was very successful. It has gone back and forth, but now with the change in the Chinese standard of living, it looks like things are shifting. What do you see in the future for maquilas, the legislation in Mexico that keeps them going, and their effect on the border, and how that is affected by some of your concepts of the airport in El Tigre, Colnet, all these infrastructures on the border? How does that all relate with the Chinese coming back, presumably?
Well, all of this is very much sponsored on my idea of the Senate Commission in order, from the north, with senators of the north and the governors of the Mexican north and the U.S. Southwest, or to discuss, to have this scope of economic development, how we can do better by having the security issue enhanced, and the border crossings and the roads and the railways and the airports. The opportunity is huge. Right now, there are more than 200 billion done through the maquila thing. We need to find the ways to finance that. There has been attempts in the U.S. To grow bonds by public backup in order to be invested in by national infrastructure. That could be a breakthrough. And all of that because of this sort of, say, economic battery, because the Mexican side has lower cost, the American side has a big market, and then everything begins. It's been flowing for so many years. And yes, the Chinese, more than being more expensive, everybody has realized that distance and logistics and just in time are difficult from China to America.
Great. Next question, please.
Good evening. My name is George. I'm a junior here. My question is, an estimated 10% of Mexican nationals live abroad. So I was wondering what you or your party are doing to get their vote or attract their vote. He mentioned earlier that it's very difficult for people that are abroad to register. So what are you or your party doing to get 10%, which if there's only a 10% difference between the PRI and the PAN, then wouldn't that be a significant population to try and get? Yeah,
it's a challenge. It's an effort, a cost, meaning you need persons and people to do promotion and take them on to the consulate in order that the requisites, because they need to prove that they are Mexicans, that they are registered in the IFE, or obtain that at the consulate. There are growing numbers, but still small. There must be an effort by all parties. So we are interested in that vote. And people in the U.S. from Mexico has already voted by coming and deciding to leave Mexico. Yeah.
One thing I should clarify is that the voting process for Mexicans to register to vote in the next elections for outside of their home country has closed, and I think that the number of applicants that they received was something like 47,000. Someone else may know the number, but it's certainly less than 60,000 people who reside currently in the United States who will have an opportunity to vote in the upcoming presidential elections out of the tens of millions that are living here. So although it would be a key voting bloc, unfortunately, Mexican electoral law will prevent the vast majority of them from voting, and that was one of the things I think that motivated Enrique's question about how do we get more access to the system for so many of those Mexicans living abroad. But please, next question.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Christensen. I attend Point Loma Nazarene University. And in my experience in Tijuana, I've noticed that there are several elected officials and city employees of Tijuana that live in San Diego and commute every day into Tijuana to work. And I'm not necessarily cynical about it. I'm just wondering if you could comment about this phenomenon of not living in the country that you govern. Thanks.
Well, the reasons can be many. Relatives, but the biggest one could be probably security. And, well, it's about a perception thing, if they would feel more secure. Or sometimes they fear something else. Sometimes some people is involved in not good things, and they're protected by crossing the border and staying here. It can be many reasons. But yes, there are, I don't know, a good portion of the able people of Tijuana is living in East Lake. I go to have hot cakes over there I hope, and I see everybody there. I say, wow. It's about security. Must be the biggest reason why they do that. Hope that we can have them buy real estate back there again.
And it also reflects the binational community that we live in. I mean, for some people, it's natural. You yourself, Governor, were born here in California, in San Diego, as many people sort of shift back and forth across the border. But I think you're right about the security issue. Let's move into a couple more questions. And we have about 20 more minutes. We might want to take 2 or 3 questions at a time just to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity, if that's all right with you.
Wait, they'll be bombarded.
No, you can answer
Go ahead.
hopefully in turn, but please go ahead, introduce yourself and let's have
Good
your
evening,
question.
Governor. My name is Rebecca Yin, and I'm a sophomore from the University of California, San Diego. My question today is in regards to what Dr. Shirk has mentioned before about your priorities upon becoming a senator after the 2012 elections. So you mentioned earlier that you're hoping for the concept of a Mexican border where there is increased dialogue and greater cooperation between the cities along the border of the United States and Mexico. I think some of the priorities you listed, for example, managing water resources, as well as creating better infrastructure, I really respect that, and I think it's great, but I just have a question concerning how you are proposing to create a solidarity on these issues on both sides of the border. Because my understanding is that, especially post 9/11, American politicians have tended to push back this any kind of issues regarding the borders because it's somewhat of a touchy subject and it might alienate constituencies. Mm-hmm. So my question is, how do you propose that we create a better system in cooperating and communicating?
Well, to me, Rebecca, is about opportunity, and I gather a lot of opportunity around making money. I think people in the region can earn and make money by following a plan. I'm a very fond person of strategic planning. Through enhancing economical clusters. There are many. You can go as primary, as agriculture, or complex, as aerospace. But it's a process about strategic planning on the binational advantages of doing it together. The American side has a lot of training and education, technology, and money. And we are growing onto that slowly but surely, and our cost of production is much lower. And so probably this is what I call the economic battery, but it needs direction. So leadership from governors, from the different entrepreneurial associations, and the different activity areas. When you are in the Senate, you can do politics by theme. You can talk about health. That's an opportunity. Your health system is too expensive. And the Mexican system is much cheaper, maybe needs to be improved in some technology aspects. But I think that using this concept of the economic differential of cost, the exchange of technology and all that, you can build up a cheaper health system. I think you were running a law about probably the possibility of doing that within 100 kilometers of the border by using your insurance. Mm-hmm. Those things can, and we're just only talking about health. It can be many things. So, gotta aim right to each of the economic areas that can be developed.
One of the things that we're very proud of at the University of San Diego is that we have 3 health plans that we can choose from as employees of the university, and one of those 3 is a health plan that's based in Baja, California, that we can receive medical services there. The downside is that many of us can't participate in it because we don't live there, and probably because of that particular legal restriction on where we can use our health care plans. But next question.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Patricia Páramo. I'm a senior student here at USD. And as you have already mentioned, Peña Nieto was ahead in the polls by 10%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in terms of what we want as Josefina's followers, it is a significant difference. And we've been trying to work a little in the most recent months to try to gain that 10% that we need to win. And I think Peña Nieto was doing really good, honestly. However, social media has been in charge of kind of destroying his personality and making him seem somewhat ignorant. And Twitter has made fun of him big time. Facebook, which is social media, fortunately, is very big, and it sounds silly, but it has really strongly destroyed his campaign. Do you think that is good for Josefina for the most recent poll?
Well, I'm a PAN member, so I can say that the poll is not 10%, it's 5%. But the other guys don't believe it. But it's all coming on account of what you're saying, Patricia. Well, I guess if you want to know about you, become a politician. And now people is learning every day more and more about Peña Nieto and about Josefina. And the other guy, El Peje. And you know about things that maybe are very private, but that are not good. And so Mr. Peña Nieto, from 3 years or more, he was on TV, every TV release at night from the soap operas. He looks like a soap opera artist.
I think that's why he has a lot of women followers, because that's the marketing strategy they're using for him. They're making him seem as the handsome candidate. That's why several women are like falling for that, which is a little bit ridiculous in my point of view, if you ask me, but unfortunately that's kind of reality and that's how it is, and I think we have to kind of deal with that for now. And I do think Josefina has been doing really good, especially because Peña Nieto, as I said, has been strongly been affected by the social media, how they've made fun of him greatly. But there was an event at the Estadio Azul, the stadium, and I think that was really bad for Josefina's campaign. And she showed up an hour late, and all her followers, the people that were waiting for her, decided to just leave. Because most of the people that were there for that event were there because of the buses that were that had to take them back to where their towns where they belonged, and then the buses had to leave. So all the people had to rush out of the stadium, and once she got there, as I said, she was late. All the people were starting to leave, so that was horrible for her because she was there trying to give this whole presentation of why we should vote for her, etc. And then there's all these people just leaving. So what do you think of that? Do you think that really affected her as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, perception in the newspapers is that she was talking to nobody because people left the stadium. Myself, I know that the stadium was full at the moment. I was there. And this is one of those things when you have rookies in the team. One guy programmed the buses to leave at 1:30. No. The ones organizing in her team, one guy decided that buses should leave at 1:30, and the event was programmed for noon. So she appeared at half hour past noon. And by the time she got into the microphone, it was too late. When you are in a political campaign, it becomes kind of a ¿cómo se dice militar? Military organization.
Military organization.
You need a general for the event, and there was no general. That's why things like that happen. She smiled because she's the daughter of a general, a Mexican general. I know her. So that's that, Patricia. I am from Ensenada. The official beginning of the national campaign, it's at midnight of this 30th of March, and it will be in Ensenada, on my account. I gotta do well because that stadium thing was a fiasco and I need to be looking really good. So I'm driving down to town to organize right away.
So you would like to see a bus leave the University of San Diego at what time? We'll talk to Patricia about that. Let's take another question, and we have time for the last two questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So please, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Caitlin Trimble. I'm an international business major. Soy exotic. And I'm studying the paralegal program here at USD. And I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit. You talked about how important education is, and I think this month or next month, a journalist named Carlos Lorete Mola is going to be releasing a documentary about the education situation in Mexico, which, you know, one of the main focuses of the film is the union and Elba Ester Gordillo, about how much money is being put into this education system, and it's really not showing the benefits that I think most Mexicans would wish from it. And I was just wondering what you thought about what the impact of a movie like this will be, because as we saw in the case of Presunto Culpable, the impact on society seems to be very great. The media talks about it a lot, but it doesn't seem to penetrate politics, and it doesn't seem to create action. And so, I mean, this film by Carlos Loret seems to have lots of momentum. In fact, I even saw a contradicting ad put out by the National Syndicate of Teachers trying to say how well they're doing, and it seems to be making some sort of impact, but I'm not sure how it will impact politics and action.
Well, politics in Mexico, as I was telling at my beginning address, is this part about evolving from this feudal Mexico from the past and a modern Mexico that is coming by reason. But none of them dominates today. You have a lot of Mexican poor, 50%. When you show them the picture, they won't really probably understand what's going on because they don't have the education. The other 50% of Mexicans have had the opportunity of education at a better level, and they belong to the middle class. They will understand. So it kind of half impacts the Mexican politics because this union thing, if you are from a middle-class family, you say, I want quality of education. But if you're coming from a poor family, you say, I want to have a place on the school for my children. The union, the teachers' union, has been coming on a discussion about education from labor, not from quality. So this is the Mexican challenge, the evolution from the feudal forms to the modern forms. And it's all about the ones that can be citizens, which is educated and middle class, trying to pull up the ones that are just inhabitants, even though they're both, and by law they are citizens. So it's a challenge about opportunity, economic development, and education. And I don't like La Maestra, the head woman of the union. She looks like the Chucky woman.
We'll be on this stage in 2 months. We'll be having Denise Dresser, who is also not particularly fond of La Maestra, according to her recent comments in the Mexican press. But let's take our last question, and please introduce yourself.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Maria Rubalcaba. I'm a sophomore here at the University of San Diego. My question is regarding immigration. So with the recent decrease of Mexican migration to the United States and the increase, especially during the Obama administration, of deportations of illegal immigrants to Mexico. A lot of them have to find ways to support themselves now that they have been sent back to Mexico, or those that just can't cross the border. So my question is, you as previous governor for a border state, what initiatives or what plans do you have for running for Senate? What plans do you have as to increase jobs and to give jobs to those people that can't find, a source of income, which is a key, a key problem that leads to that, to immigration here, and as well as what are some plans that Vasquez Mota has to secure jobs for Mexicans so that they won't have to leave their country, in order to find a resource. Thank you.
That's a $64,000 question. Well, of course, Maria, this is about opportunity. We need to have lots and lots of opportunity, more opportunities than the numbers of people. That's the challenge. I can give a story on about when you go down or you are in Mexico, you're kind of in a warrior attitude. You're defending yourself. You want to grab whatever opportunity before the other one does, because maybe there is not another one for you. So it's difficult. And when we cross the border, we kind of feel relieved. There is not that type of pressure. What is the difference? Opportunity. There are many more opportunities here than there. Maybe opportunities here are bigger than you. So you need someone to help you. That's why the teamwork. Down there is no teamwork. It's the contrary. But then it's natural. Why I've been talking so much about opportunity and getting together and study clusters and program for development and I guess government, the best it can do is to clear out the path, the way, to facilitate, not to be a burden, to support the ones with entrepreneurial leadership. That's the name of the game. But while there is not enough opportunity, there is still going to be an interest in coming to the U.S. But I think we need to be, both nations need to be responsible about that and organize some type of permit, which is the numbers is under the U.S. decision, but not to permit this flow of people, of persons coming up with no papers, called illegal. But it could be prevented. The U.S. is so powerful that it could do it, but it wasn't done. Why? Because they need cheap labor, not officially recognized. This is about human rights, the human perspective of people. Our Constitution cannot prevent us from putting our army to prevent Mexicans coming on. Mexicans are free. They can go anywhere they want. But we need to build some policy where we agree on how to protect or identify or surround persons, not only Mexicans, people from the world. It happens, I don't know, it can be happening in the Middle East right now because of problems. So we need to take a more human stand on migration.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Governor, for a fabulous talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say on behalf of the Transborder Institute, we wanted to offer a small token of our appreciation for being here today. Thank you so much for your excellent comments, and we hope that we'll be able to bring you back when you are senator and hear some more about how things are going in Mexico City. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Gracias.